Again, I'd like to welcome you to the last week of October, the last Sunday of October. Reverend Patty is taking care of our sister temple in Marysville today, so Reverend Tim and Carol can join us, and it's nice to welcome them back to the Betsuin. Reverend Patty wishes she could be here, especially because we have so many guests visiting, and she enjoys it when Kohara Sensei brings her at least one of his boys, 3 boys with him. And I was thinking with so many of our visitors from Honganji, potential ministers to BCA here, I thought I'd start by sharing a wonderment of mine. It's something I thought about from time to time over the years, and sometimes I wonder what Shinran Shonin would think about the creation of Jodo Shinshu and Honganji. For those of you who are new to our Betsuin, Shinran Shonin is considered the founder of Jodo Shinshu Honganji, but we know absolutely that it was never Shinran's intention to begin a new sect of Buddhism. To the end of his life, Shinran always considered himself simply a disciple of his teacher, Honen Shonin. So what would Shinran think about all that has evolved from the seed of his life? What would his comments be on our collective reverence and appreciation for the spiritual legacy of his life? What would Shinran make of the evolution of the temples dedicated to him all over the world? How would Shinran Shonin view the interpretations that scholars have of his life and the efforts of his life to share the Dharma? I think about this from time to time. What would Shinran think? And what was he like in his pursuit of the Dharma? About 6 years ago, I remember having a conversation with Sensei Koichi talking about this same wonderment. And Koichi Sensei said, very interesting, he said, I think Shinran Shonin was like Forrest Gump. Do you remember the movie Forrest Gump? You remember this conversation? He said, I think Shinran Shonin was like Forrest Gump. And I wondered where he was going with this. And then he continued, Forrest Gump just started running just for himself. And soon people were just following him. He never said, everyone follow me. He never said, if you follow me, I'll lead you to a better place. Forrest Gump just ran because that's what he needed to do. And I still feel this analogy is refreshing and insightful. Think about it. Once the braces fell off of Forrest Gump's legs, he just ran. And throughout his life, he kept running. And people just began following him. Think about it. Once Shinran, the revolutionary teacher of the Dharma, once he discarded and removed the shackles and braces of the traditions from his life in his time, he was free. He was free to simply seek and embrace the Dharma as a true human being of no rank. Shinran said of himself, I am neither a monk nor a layman. And Shinran did not live his life attached to tradition, and that had so dominated Buddhism 800 years ago during his time. He was not pursuing acceptance, fame, or recognition. In fact, during his time, Shinran's name is not even mentioned on the list of the great Buddhist monks of the Kamakura era. As I mentioned, Shinran was not interested in pursuing fame and recognition. He was simply interested in pursuing the truth. And it was with his ever-deepening humility that he lived his life. He would always simply called himself Gutoku Shaku Shinran, which means foolish, bald-headed disciple of the Buddha. I've always liked that. He always just called himself Gutoku Shaku Shinran, foolish, bald-headed disciple of the Buddha. In considering his life, Shinran was actively living his life with what Buddhism calls non-attachment. The teaching of non-attachment applies even to the Dharma itself. To not be attached to the Dharma like an object that we can own. Instead, we must seek the Dharma and allow it to help us live with clarity. Allow it to help us live our lives appreciating the moment that is right now. The teaching of non-attachment encourages us to learn from the past, to plan for the future, but to live in the moment. For this ever-changing moment right now is the only time we're living. Reverend Patty shared in last month's Sangha newsletter that this past July, we moved our 98-year-old Uncle Tosh from Berkeley to assisted living at ACC's Greenhaven Terrace. It was 6 months ago, on May 29th, Friday, that he did not respond to our daily phone calls checking in on him. After Auntie passed away 7 years ago, we've been pretty much the ones looking out for him and checking on him virtually, well, actually every day, at least calling to check in. When he didn't answer, at first we weren't concerned because Uncle Tosh always had this routine. And every Friday, he would drive to the cemetery, bring flowers to Auntie, his parents, his siblings, and he was usually home by the late morning after he had late breakfast or early lunch. When he failed to answer the phone at noon, we drove immediately to Berkeley to check on him. And Reverend Patty's article detailed the events that followed. And now we are so relieved to have him just 5 minutes away. But it is truly inspiring that Uncle Tosh's mind is really as sharp as just anyone I know. I mean this absolutely without the slightest exaggeration. He is so bright and so sharp, but his mind, although sharp, his body is now over 98 years old. And as he said to me the other morning while I was putting him through his physical therapy exercises, he said, there's no beating time. There's no beating time. When we talk, he shakes his head when we talk about the Giants, the A's, or the 49ers. He told me that the 49ers should have drafted Stanford's Andrew Luck. He roots for Peyton Manning. He smiles when we talk about Donald Trump's most recent headline remarks. And he follows the stock market every single day. But what I have found most amazing about Uncle Tosh has been his ability to just move forward with whatever life brings his way, without attachment. Without attachment. Back in May and early June, those few days overlapping, after 4 days of hospitalization, it was required that he be moved from the hospital to the rehab facility. But once there, he began to grow stronger. And as he grew stronger, Patty and I would take him out for drives, and even a few times to his favorite restaurants for lunch. And during those 7 weeks he was in rehab, and especially whenever we went out for a drive or to lunch, I would ask him if he wanted to go home to get anything or just to visit. He's lived in that home since 1948. And Uncle would just matter-of-factly say, "No, that's okay." We began to discuss the 3 options that were probably lying ahead of him: to try assisted living in Berkeley, or to live in his home with an in-home caregiver, or to move to Sacramento where we could be closer to him. He thought about this for a few weeks, and when the time came to make a decision, he said very thoughtfully, "I think it would be best for me to be near you." So 4 months ago, on July 23rd, we moved him to Greenhaven Terrace. Even when I began to make arrangements to move some of his furniture to Greenhaven Terrace, I asked him, "Uncle, would you like to come back with me to your home? It's like, and you can show me which pieces of furniture you want me to bring to the new apartment. He just said, no, I trust your judgment. And on the day we checked him out of rehab, and we were about to drive him to Sacramento, I asked him, would you like to stop by your home before we drive by Sacramento? And again, very calmly, he said, no, that's okay. How many of us could live with such non-attachment? Until the end of May, he was driving himself around. He was living independently in his home for almost 7 decades. A home filled with memories of a loving marriage, of caregiving to his parents as they aged. A home where he has lived almost 70 years of his life. Then suddenly, the unexpected fall. The paramedics took him from his home that May afternoon, and Uncle never looked back. Never looked back. I've asked him a few times if he would like to drive back for a visit. His reply has been, no, it's okay. I have everything I need. I don't need to go back. But once he did add, maybe I'd like to hakamairi. I'd like to visit the cemetery one more time. And I told him that whenever he is really up to going, we'll take him. When Patty and I look around our home, we find ourselves often saying, wow, we have so much stuff. We have so much stuff. Sometimes I've tried going through some of the boxes, they're in those rooms that we hide and close the door when people come over, or they're stacked up in the garage. I even built a 12 by 12 shed 15 years ago to empty out our garage, and it's still full, even though the shed is full. So when we moved into this house 15 years ago, I packed up boxes, moved them over, and some of these boxes I haven't opened since we got into the house. And I've thought to myself as I've looked through some of these boxes, if I haven't needed these things in 15 years, I should just dump it, right? It's clearly this stuff, whatever's in here, I don't need. Then I open up the boxes and I say, wow, this stuff is really neat. You guys do that, huh? You ever do that? Wow, this is really cool stuff. And I'm surprised at all the hidden treasures that I think I found in those boxes. And I'm thinking, I can't throw this out. I might need this someday. I've even found 2 boxes of books that I hope to read someday. What's up with that? Unlike Shinran Shonin, who pursued the Dharma without attachment to the traditions of his day, unlike our Uncle Tosh, who was able to totally move forward into each new day without attachment to his home and all the things that he and Auntie have collected and lived with their entire life together. In considering them, I know that I have a long way to go. Last week on NPR, I heard an interview with Pharrell Williams, who wrote and sang the song Happy. The interviewer asked him, so Pharrell, what makes you happy? What makes you happy? And I thought his response was very Jodo Shinshu, very Buddhistic. And he said, it is living with appreciation. Really? That's all he said, is living with appreciation. And then he added, it's all about our perspective. He said, I'd like to say to all the young people who hear this, happiness is not something you buy. Happiness is something you have to try to do. Happiness is not something you buy. Happiness is something we have to try to do. In other words, happiness is not found in the stuff we buy or in the boxes of stuff we have. Real happiness is something we make and create for ourselves with our perspective, our attitude, and our actions. No one owes us happiness. We have to make our own happiness by having our Dharma eyes open and living in this moment with appreciation. Patty and I both see this in Uncle Tosh, and he has said to us, I often think how fortunate I am to having you both take such good care of me. And he's always so grateful. Even last Sunday, we left him after dinner, and I called him minutes later, and I said, oh, Uncle, tonight, Sunday night football, Colts are playing the Patriots. And he said, yes, I know, I'm watching the game. Then he adds, thank you very much for your call. Thank you very much for your call. Even for that, he was thankful. Happiness is not in the stuff we buy, not in the stuff we have. We have to make our own happiness, having our Dharma eyes open and living with gratitude and appreciation. I know I have a long way to go, but I'm so fortunate to have the Dharma and so many Dharma friends constantly showing me the way. And when I retire, I will go through those boxes of stuff. I will clean out some of those rooms and make closet space, and I will clean out the garage. At least that's the plan for now. So please enjoy the last 11 weeks of this year, my dear Dharma friends here in Sacramento. And thank you so much for joining us this beautiful, it's still like Ohigan weather, perfect weather, this last October Sunday. In closing, please join me in Gassho. Happiness is not found in the stuff we buy or in the boxes of stuff we have. Real happiness is something we make and create for ourselves with our perspective, our attitude, and our actions. No one owes us happiness. We have to make our own happiness by having our Dharma eyes open and living in the moment with appreciation. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida.